This is my video about troubleshooting the Century pump controller. I have it mounted here on the wall. The pump's down there. And what this thing was doing was this position switch here was all flaky. Like I would turn it and it would seem to make a poor connection. And when it made a poor connection, it would end up going into like this setup mode, and basically my pool would turn green, because what would happen is after a few days I would realize my pump hadn't been running at all, which is not great. So I ended up ordering that new one, and it's $250 from them, and I figured that rotary switch was the culprit, and I decided to go ahead and take apart my old one after I got the new one and see if that rotary switch could be replaced. And its design is different than I had expected. So the rotary switch, I've taken apart the old one here. The rotary switch, I was thinking, would have maybe a set of resistors on it that would tell what position it was in, and that it would move. Well, how the rotary switch is actually put together, this guy, on the inside, it has two little fingers, one right here and one right here, and they ride on two sets of traces, and it looks like they probably ground the outer ring to the inner ring. So one of them is always running on the inner ring, the other one is touching one of these outer rings, so it's making a connection, for example, between clock and the center, or off and the center. And so when it was in run, instead of making a connection between run and center, it kind of was making no connection, which may be sort of the reset or the off position. So what I ended up doing is, when I took it apart, I used one of these guys. And this one I used to clean out some spider webs and stuff that were in a little wad on the back of the thing near where the wiring's hooked up. But I went through and I just scuffed these pins here a little bit, and also used my finger and just bent them up just slightly so that maybe they ride a little more firmly on that track. And to get to this spot, what I ended up doing was going on the back, and I took out 4 screws that hold the two halves together. And I thought for sure I was going to have to try to pop this button off, but it didn't really want to come out. And when you take this off, you see the back side of this board, like so. And it's got 4 screws on the corners, and then it's got one more special screw in the center, which has a little plastic washer underneath it. So I would keep those more separated. So anyways, we're going to put it back together, and we're going to plug it in and see if I fixed it. If I fixed it, I'm sending this other one back. If it's not fixed, then who knows, maybe some circuitry is toast. But anyways, we'll see what happens. I'm going to go ahead and put this board back together. The position of the switch is not so important. It looks like these buttons, there's a gasket on the back. That's not too important yet to line up correctly, but these buttons look like they're going to go through holes like so. Looks like that kind of lines up. And then I'm going to go to the back side of it here, and I'm going to put the 5 screws back in. Here's the one with the plastic washer underneath the head of it. That one goes in the center, and it looks like it's kind of gone into the spot. These other guys I'm just going to drop into the holes, try to get it to line up. I took it apart with a drill, which is probably a mean way to do this, probably a dumb way to do it. So I'm going to put it back together with a screwdriver now that I think maybe I have a little better chance of this working. I don't know. We'll see. Because if those little fingers that ride on the track, if that is improved at all, then maybe this thing will work. Maybe I'll have saved $250 with a little bit of sanding and some screwdriver work. But anyways, I'm gonna put this thing together and then I will test it out and we'll see what it does. Okay, so kind of revisiting this thing a little bit. When I go to put it back together, before I start throwing screws into it, really got to get this guy, which is the switch on the front. It's got 4 fingers that hold it in and a peg in the center. So I'm not worried about the alignment because it really can rotate into any position and that's fixed. But you got to push pretty hard and make sure that each one of these tabs has engaged properly to where you see a gap behind it and the little foot is on there. So I had to push real tight right next to each one of these things until they popped. And now it should be easy to get the screws in and we'll see how that goes. So I switched this thing out with the one that I took apart and cleaned. It's pretty much acting like normal. So if I switch the dial around, it behaves like it's supposed to. So I don't know, I may have fixed it. I'm going to keep it for a day or two, test it, monkey with it. If it gives me any problems, then I guess I'll put the new one in. But if not, then who knows, maybe this thing's fixed. Before, sometimes even just closing the lid on it would make the pump turn off, which is a real pisser. I was able to kind of cram the lid closed and it didn't change the operation of it. So that's a good sign. We'll see what happens. Anyways, I will post the follow-up on whether or not I fixed it. If I fixed it, and I fixed it for $0, unless you don't have a piece of Brillo pad. Well, it's been 4 days and the pool looks good. Each morning the pump's been running. Pool slacker's done a good job of keeping the bottom of the pool clean. So I'm happy. I believe the pump controller is fixed.